Part 100. My lover's jealousy is his own happiness. Jealousy taste is full of sweetness. The preparations for the drug rehabilitation home are almost done. Xuan Huaifeng took up the responsibilities that Bai Xuelan gave him, and became the person in charge of all matters in the drug rehabilitation center. All aspects of financing must be approved by him. Firstly, there are many extremely trivial things, and secondly, he is very serious. People don't want to be sloppy in everything, so things that were originally very busy are now even more busy. These days, Xuan Huaifeng spun around while walking, returned to the mansion, ate and took a shower, so tired that he couldn't open his eyes. Bai Xuelan is different from other people. He is born with good energy and is busy with his own affairs. He wakes up early every day and does not see anyone during the day. Only when he comes back at night does he meet Xuan Huaifeng. Pulling Xuan Huaifeng for joy. Xuan Huaifeng had a soft pillow on the back of his head, and he couldn't even pull out the strength to open his eyes. He said in his mouth, "No, I'm really tired." Bai Xuelan said, "You're starving me like this on purpose? You're starving me. Come on, let's see how you clean it up." His eyes moved down. Looking at Xuan Huaifeng's two thin lips, his chest heaved slightly, without any precaution. This kind of liveliness and fragrance, let it go. It is really not in line with Bai Xuelan's principles of doing things. But to deprive Xuan Huaifeng of his right to sleep, to wake up roughly and force his bow, it would go against Bai Xuelan's love for him. While thinking about it, Bai Xuelan leaned over to kiss the curvature of the unrivaled lips, like a worshipper, from the corner of the lips, gradually swam down to the chin and neck, and then got under the pajamas with his hands, stroking softly waist and abdomen. Because of the lack of a batch of medical supplies in the drug rehabilitation center, Xuan Huaifeng suffered from the way the government officials and gentlemen worked, and went to 6 or 7 places during the day. The official document may not be approved. So, he just wanted to sleep, so he could get rid of this tired feeling quickly. But Bai Xuelan's stroking method is very hateful. Although gentle, it does not have a hint of provocation. It is like a good piano that wants to be quiet, but it encounters a finger that is good at pulling strings. With a click of his finger, piano couldn't fulfill his wish no matter how quiet he wanted to be. Xuan Huaifeng only felt that he was being hugged by a coquettish big dog, rubbed his face, kissed his chin, neck, and rubbed his body lightly. After stroking his waist and eyes a few times, Xuan Huaifeng was ticklish, couldn't help laughing, and murmured, "You're so dishonest." Still closing his eyes. Bai Xuelan said, "If I want to be honest, I can only starve. As the saying goes, a child who can cry has milk to eat." When Xuan Huaifeng heard what he said, he was complaining to himself, grabbed his hand that was playing tricks on his own waist, and said, "You still have a child? Which child has the habit of tossing people like you? Don't make trouble. I woke up anyway, and I will discuss something with you." Meaning, he slowly turned over half body, his hands lightly wrapped around Bai Xuelan's shoulders, half hooked his neck, and his legs in pajama pants were also touching Bai Xuelan under the thin silk blanket. It's not a warm hug, but at least it's a nice reward. Bai Xuelan was immediately honest. "Happy to enjoy the warmth of my lover." Bai Xuelan asked, "What are we discussing?" Xuan Huaifeng glanced at him and said, "Although the opening of the drug rehabilitation center does not require much pomp, it is a serious business after all." "What day?" He woke up, but he was still drowsy. The star's eyes are slightly sad, and the cheeks are stained with a little red, which is very attractive. Bai Xuelan swept his eyes to and from on his face, for fear of missing a piece, and said, "What day do you think is suitable?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "Of course, I hope that the sooner the better. The sooner this place will be open, the more people can be saved, but the 6-party talks will be held in a few days, and this is the government's top priority." Bai Xuelan said, "It doesn't matter, the two are not in conflict. Besides, if you didn't say it, you don't need too much pomp. On the side of the 6-party talks, just let the government make extravagances. On the side of the drug rehabilitation center, we might as well be quiet. There is no need to publish a newspaper, call the relevant people to wait, hang a red ribbon, cut it with scissors, and open the door. Xuan Huaifeng said, if you say so, I will do it. Bai Xuelan said, don't say that. You also told me, whether I think this way is in line with your idea. If you have other ideas, we will discuss it. Xuan Huaifeng said, no, this is exactly what I want. Don't worry about anything else, just do the simplest ceremony, don't make those official articles. Do the real thing, it should be like this, moisturizing things silently, okay? Bai Xuelan kissed Xuan Huaifeng's soft eyelids one time. Xuan Huaifeng sighed and said, you're messing around with relatives, making people like this, and you dare to call yourself silent. I think it's more ferocious than thunder. You won't give up until you reach your goal. Bai Xuelan laughed. Worse still, he said, it's like this? How did it happen? I must see it. Xuan Huaifeng's whole body was set on fire by his provocation, and his breathing was different from just before, but he took a deep breath, and suddenly asked, open on the 10th day of the first day, do you think it's okay? He was counting the days just now. Bai Xuelan was both funny and angry, and said, it's up to you. Another burst of dissatisfaction. He pinched his firm and delicate nose and said arrogantly, in the future, I don't need to talk about official business. Xuan Huaifeng smiled and said in a low voice, I'm sorry. It was as if the blood all over his body was pouring into his chest, and he had to scream a few times to the sky to express it. But after all, he didn't let out a long whistle, pressing hard on the strange happiness that only his lover could give him, hoping to keep it in his heart for a while longer. The big hand clasped the back of Xuan Huaifeng's head, rubbed his 5 fingers into the soft black hair, and asked in a hoarse voice, come here, okay? The man's smell of plunder and possession was hot and warm, revealing touching limb strike. Xuan Huaifeng sniffed his breath, and felt a little distracted, leaned back, put the weight of his head on Bai Xuelan's palm, raised his face, exhaled and asked, only once? Can you stop? Bai Xuelan was excited, and the Shandong accent came out again, and replied like a steel whip, sir. I can stop it. At the moment, he stripped his lover as white and flawless as when he was born. As soon as he folded up his long legs, he first grabbed the cute-shaped part viciously, exerted his tongue, sucked Xuan Huaifeng's thin body, and shivered like a grass in the wind, sticking it against Bai Xuelan's black hand on the short hair. The 10 fingers can't bear to open and tighten, and the tension is opened. After drinking the nectar and Jade dew that Xuan Huaifeng offered while whimpering, Bai Xuelan didn't need to be polite. Hold him tightly and penetrate deeply. Xuan Huaifeng shook his head frequently against Bai Xuelan, resting his chin on Bai Xuelan's shoulder weakly, panting. Bai Xuelan could easily bite his ear and whispered, it's really not going to happen once. Let's work together again tonight. Let's do it twice. I'll just eat half of it, and you'll have to pay it back in the future. He came from behind. With one hand on his flexible and charming waist, he opened his leg with the other. Entering very gently, this posture alone, without hindrance, is bound to go deeper. Xuan Huaifeng was in a trance. From the inside to the outside, he was soaked by the smell of Bai Xuelan, and he felt very happy, as if he had done a great and beautiful thing, especially listening to Bai Xuelan's heavy and sweet breathing behind him, being sprayed by his hot air on his back. The thing in his body swelled with unspeakable joy. Following this rogue, I really learned badly. Xuan Huaifeng thought in a daze, and noticed that the posture of the person behind him had changed, and he exerted himself to stimulate a sweet pain in his lower body. Bai Xuelan hugged him from behind, rubbing his nose against the back of his neck, as if seeking something. Xuan Huaifeng also turned his head with difficulty, as if he was looking for something, and used his profile to touch Bai Xuelan's lips. The heat of those lips touching his cheeks could melt iron and stone. Xuan Huaifeng said intermittently, Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan was eating the sweetness, and his breath was also sweet. He answered a single voice in a low voice, huh? Deeply, gasping for breath. Xuan Huaifeng knelt on his knees on the sheet, and his body was swayed back and forth by Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan wrapped his arms around his waist, not only preventing him from being soft on the bed, but also fixed, pushing forward firmly. Xuan Huaifeng followed his passionate rhythm, swaying sweetly and embarrassingly, and asked him, "Do you like me?" Bai Xuelan said, "What do you think?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I said you like me." Bai Xuelan said nothing behind him. The man's answer was a sudden, deep piercing. And, a lover's kiss that fell on the bare back, softly falling on the petals like a feather. The next day, there was no unexpected back pain. Xuan Huaifeng's waist and the unspoken place felt indescribable, but it was not easy to protest against Bai Xuelan. He knew that Bai Xuelan was in moderation last night, and if he let go of what Bai Xuelan meant, it would probably be a multiple of 2, not just 2. Bai Xuelan got out of bed at 7 o'clock, but he pressed Xuan Huaifeng, who wanted to get out of bed with him, and said, "You are very busy. Go to sleep again. If you have something to do, I will help you explain it to others." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Everyone has their own errands, you can leave me alone. When the drug rehabilitation center is finished, I will ask you for a few days off." Bai Xuelan knew that he was not willing to be lazy, so he could only go with him. When Xuan Huaifeng saw that he was going outside the house, he stopped him and said, "There's one more thing, I always forgot to ask." Bai Xuelan turned back and asked with a smile, "What's the matter?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "Are you still locked Huayan in the mansion?" Bai Xuelan said, "Yes, why are you asking this all of a sudden? Are you still afraid that I will kill him without telling you?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "Where did you think you went? He's my third brother anyway. I'll ask, it's still reasonable, who will bring him food and drink now?" Bai Xuelan said, "It's just a few servants to send it over." Xuan Huaifeng asked, "Xiao Fian wanted to deliver food to Huayan and she came to beg me. I thought it would be better to ask you what you mean first." Bai Xuelan said without thinking, "No wonder you are busy, and take such trivial matters to heart. Come on. This Xiao Fian was called by me to serve you, but she gave you more problems, so I can drive her out." Xuan Huaifeng hurriedly said, "Why are you driving people away? She is careful and attentive and serves me well. Ah, if you don't want her to bring food to Huayan, then forget it. I'll go and tell her that it can't be done." Bai Xuelan said, "When did I say no?" Xuan Huaifeng asked, "Then what do you mean? Are you allowed?" Bai Xuelan said, "Can't you be the master of such trivial matters?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I allowed her, so don't come back and get angry with me, saying that I made my own opinions." It aroused Bai Xuelan's interest. He was originally standing by the door, but when he heard it, he came over, put his arms around Xuan Huaifeng, rubbed his lips against Xuan Huaifeng's lips softly, and murmured with a smile, "I wish you could make an opinion. Always look for an opportunity to take advantage of the situation to spend a few days and nights with you." Xuan Huaifeng was very embarrassed and said, "No seriousness." Pushing Bai Xuelan on the shoulder. Bai Xuelan's eyes were bright, and he kissed him for a while, then walked out the door with a smile. Xiao Fian heard the voices of these two people and knew that Xuan Huaifeng was also up, so she brought a copper basin and came in to make hot water to serve. Xuan Huaifeng said to her, "You can deliver food to Huayan." Xiao Fian was surprised and said, "Really?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "What am I doing to lie to you for no reason? But you must remember that he is a criminal after all. The person who is at fault, don't talk to him too much. His house is guarded by guards, you can go in and put your food in." Xiao Fian was in a hurry, and rubbed a clean towel for Xuan Huaifeng over. Xuan Huaifeng bent over, washed his face carefully, and was holding a toothbrush with tooth powder when he suddenly caught a glimpse of the housekeeper coming from the corner of his eyes. When the official's family arrived at the door, he greeted Xuan Huaifeng and said, seeing that Bai Xuelan was not in front of him, he walked into the house, got closer, smiled and said to Xuan Huaifeng, yesterday there was a letter from the Prime Minister's office. It was sent by the police. The people who did the work were not careful, they treated it as something unimportant and left it at the servant. I only saw it when I went to see it this morning. If the general manager knew about this, the people who did the work would not know what kind of punishment they would be punished for. I have to shiver outside the hospital. They beg me, but I can't do anything. I can only ask Adjutant Xuan, can you say something nice in front of the chief? Xuan Huaifeng said, the letter from the Prime Minister? Be careful. It seems that the six-party talks are about to happen. Maybe this letter will talk about this matter. If I miss a serious matter, I can't help clarify it, but if it's trivial, I can try it. The official laughed, yes, I'm relieved by your words, I know you have a good heart. Xuan Huaifeng said, where is the letter? Bring it to me to see. The official handed it over. Xuan Huaifeng took a look, to Bai Xuelan was written outside, and Brother Min Xian was written in detail below. This Min Xian is exactly the name of the Prime Minister, and the envelope used by the Prime Minister's office is not the kind of official document, but an ordinary envelope. It's no wonder that people who work on things don't pay attention for a while. The Prime Minister's words are not necessarily recognized by all the servants. They received letters from the Prime Minister, and they were used to the envelopes of large official documents. Xuan Huaifeng has always been in charge of being an adjutant, and he always takes care of the affairs around the chief. He received letters from the Prime Minister's office and other officials, not once or twice, and now he wanted to open it on behalf of Bai Xuelan to see what happened. What's the matter? Taking a letter opener, Xuan Huaifeng stopped again. Thinking about it, the Prime Minister does not use official business envelopes, and the signatures are written on them, which is a bit like private business. I don't know if it's Bai Xuelan's family affairs. If it is true, it would be disrespectful to dismantle it by myself. So, he put down the letter-opening knife again, and said to the official family, you go first. When the chief arrives, I will give this letter to him. If I can help, I will always help. The official family bowed and agreed. With a yes, he rubbed his hands and walked out of the courtyard. Xuan Huaifeng put the letter on the table and went to get the tooth powder to brush his teeth. On the other side, Xiao Fian poured out the dirty water that had been used in the copper basin, and put a basin of clean water in a white copper basin and brought it in. She took a rag and rubbed it in the basin to wipe the household items in the house. Xuan Huaifeng raised his eyes, just in time to see Xiao Fian picking up the letter on the table in order to wipe the table. Xuan Huaifeng reminded her, the letter was sent by the Prime Minister to Bai Xuelan. Don't hold it with wet hands. Be careful that your fingerprints smear the words on the envelope. Put it down, but accidentally didn't pinch it tightly, and let go of it all at once. The letter naturally fell to the ground. Xiao Fian hurriedly bent over to fish it, but she didn't catch it. The fluffy envelope was carried by her sleeve, slipped in mid-air, and fell into the white copper basin filled with water. Xuan Huaifeng strode forward, hurriedly bent over, and fished the letter out of the white copper basin. The envelope was soaked with water, and the outside was already wet. Xuan Huaifeng saw that the handwriting on the envelope was blurred, and he was afraid that it would get soaked inside. If the content inside was also messed up, how could he explain it to Bai Xuelan? He didn't care too much. He hurriedly opened the letter, and took out the letter inside, but because he was anxious, he made the mistake of Xiao Fian just now. Fortunately, this time, the letter paper did not float into the copper basin with water again. Xuan Huaifeng breathed a sigh of relief, lowered his head to pick it up, but suddenly found a corner of the photo in the letter. Curious, he pinched the corner and gently pulled it out of the letter to see that it was a half-length photo of a woman. I don't know who. It is necessary to send a letter to such a big person as Prime Minister Pai, with such a beautiful photo attached. Xuan Huaifeng pondered. When he woke up in a sunny mood in the morning, there was a dark cloud floating out of nowhere, which made him feel a little bit of pressure for no reason. Xiao Fian poked her head beside him, and caught a glimpse of the photo of the woman he was holding in his hand. She lived in this yard and knew very well the close relationship between Bai Xuelan and Xuan Huaifeng, and naturally knew why Xuan Huaifeng was stuffy. Xiao Fian has always been worthless for Xuan Huaifeng, but this time, she was even more angry with the chief of the customs. It can be seen that Adjutant Elder Xuan should have followed Brother Zhan. Xiao Fian deliberately boasted, "This photo is really beautiful, Adjutant Xuan, who is she?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I don't know. Maybe it's a relative of the chief's family." Xiao Fian said, "What do relatives do to send photos? I heard that people are very fashionable these days. They give photos on blind dates." Xuan Huaifeng said, "How do I know why they send photos? After you have cleaned up, you can rest." Xiao Fian said, "Why don't you read what the letter says? The origin of this beautiful person will always be mentioned in the letter." Xuan Huaifeng said, "This is the letter from the chief. We shouldn't have seen the photo. How can we still peek at his letter? They all opened it up first, and then read it. The regiment leader's wife also opened my letter. After I went to the regiment leader's house, my godfather wrote me a letter, and the wife hurriedly opened it for me. After reading it, she didn't tell me what was written in it, but she tore the letter in front of me and beat me up." Xuan Huaifeng smiled and said, "The situation is different, your godfather and master are because of you. You don't know how to read, help you read. The head's wife has done something wrong in the first place. Now you are different from before, you have to remember some basic principles, don't secretly read other people's private messages, this is called respect." Xiao Fian smiled, "I don't understand your fashionable words," she said while doing it. She had cleaned up the table and chairs, threw the dirty rag in the copper basin, twisted the copper basin and went out. On the other side, Bai Xuelan came back from the study and entered the room. Seeing Xuan Huaifeng at the small round table, still wearing pajamas, he said casually, "Why haven't you changed your clothes yet? Seeing as you are tired, I want you to sleep 2 more hours. For an hour, you don't want to, so you are in a daze. Why don't you lie down on the bed, what's the point of taking a day off?" Bai Xuelan had changed into his trousers and white shirt, but he was too lazy to put on his suit before going out. "When I turned around and opened the drawer, I searched for a silk tie I liked in it." Xuan Huaifeng was silent for a moment, then calmly said, "Here is a letter from you, sent by the Prime Minister. Let's see." Insert the photo back into the letter and hand it to him together. Bai Xuelan heard him say that he was not looking for a tie for the time being. He turned back to get the letter, and when he saw it was letter paper, he turned his eyes again, and saw an envelope vaguely thrown in the confetti bin under his feet. He asked with a smile, "Have you checked it? This close-fitting housekeeper is more careful than anyone else." Xuan Huaifeng was uncomfortable, his heart seemed to be salted, and he was caught off guard by Bai Xuelan's joke, as if he was suddenly stabbed with a sharp needle, which stabbed his face. Everything changed, suddenly raised his head, a pair of bright black pupils stared at Bai Xuelan and asked, "What do you mean? The tone is unusual." Bai Xuelan was about to open the folded letter and found that Xuan Huaifeng's attitude was not right, so he was surprised, put the letter on the small round table, came over, stroked Xuan Huaifeng's shoulder with one hand, and curled his index finger with the other. Hooked on Xuan Huaifeng's chin, raised it slightly to face himself, looked at him and asked, "What's wrong?" "Just kidding, you made me so angry." Xuan Huaifeng said, "I didn't mean to peek at your letter." Bai Xuelan couldn't help laughing and said, "These letters of mine, if you don't help me read 8 or 10 of them, you have come up with such a theory of peeking and not peeping. You are asking for it for no reason. Are you having trouble with me?" "Huh?" He stood and Xuan Huaifeng was sitting, so condescending at the moment, he could see the looming collarbone under the collar of Xuan Huaifeng's pajamas, and also that Xuan Huaifeng seemed to be angry just now. At 2 o'clock, there was a slight dizziness on his cheeks, and the bridge of his nose was straight, showing 2 points of noble stubbornness. He is handsome and stern, and the person he recruits has a great desire to conquer. Bai Xuelan never turned a blind eye to someone's soft balsam Jade. After he finished speaking, he slid his hand down into the collar of his pajamas and rubbed the very beautifully shaped collarbone. Xuan Huaifeng's expression froze, as if he was about to scold him, but before he could speak, a sullen look appeared on his face. Slowly, in that gloomy mood, there was a little guilty conscience that made a mistake. He silently maintained a motionless posture, allowing his boss and chief to caress slender. Bai Xuelan enjoyed the joy of the touch, and did not forget to observe Xuan Huaifeng's emotions. Seeing him like this, he felt strange in his heart. Just as he was thinking about the reason, he heard Xuan Huaifeng whisper, "I didn't mean it." Bai Xuelan asked, "What?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I accidentally dropped the letter into the water basin. I was afraid that it would get wet, so I dismantled it." After a pause, he added with laughter, "I'm sorry." Bai Xuelan smiled indifferently and said, "It's a trivial matter with sesame and mung bean, what are you doing with it? Even if you open 100 sheets, it's just a pile of waste paper." Xuan Huaifeng said, "I just don't want you to think that I am that kind of person who dismantles your private messages." Suddenly he gasped. It turned out that the two of them were talking, but Bai Xuelan didn't stop his hand. He touched under the pajamas further and further down, and actually pinched the sensitive little flesh on his chest and grinned it finely. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't take it anymore, so he quickly grabbed the evil hand and said, "Everyone is serious, don't make trouble, can you do it in a while?" His cheeks flew red. He looked a little furious, but in Bai Xuelan's eyes, he was a little more cute and vivid than before. Bai Xuelan said, "What are you all? Isn't it just you and me here? I won't make trouble with you, so who should I make trouble with?" However, Xuan Huaifeng had already grabbed his hand firmly, so he gently let go. After this, he turned to look at the letter on the table. He didn't know there was something else in it, and he didn't pay attention. As soon as the letter was opened, the beautiful photo of the woman fell and fluttered on the table. Seeing that, Bai Xuelan suddenly ran out of a half-length photo, and then contacted Xuan Huaifeng's attitude. He suddenly understood a little in his heart, but he was a little bit wickedly happy. He didn't bother to explain anything, just ignored the photo on the table, just opened the letter and read it again. After reading the letter, he glanced at the beautiful figure on the photo, and asked Xuan Huaifeng, "Do you know whose photo this is?" Xuan Huaifeng said, I didn't read your letter, what should I know? I'll know who's in this photo. It's getting late, so I'm going to change my clothes and go out. I stood up and went to get my clothes. Bai Xuelan hugged him from behind, forbid him to leave, and smiled evilly, "I know, you are jealous." Xuan Huaifeng denied it without turning back the limelight, "You are talking nonsense." Bai Xuelan said, "Okay, just treat me nonsense. Since you said that you are not jealous, you should be more generous and let me report the origin of the people in this photo. If you are so angry, you will not even listen to the report. Then if you weren't angry because of jealousy, I don't know why you're angry." With his ability to speak well, Xuan Huaifeng has always been invincible. With such a clever run by him, Xuan Huaifeng had no words to deal with. It seemed that no matter what he said, he would be accused of being stingy and jealous. Xuan Huaifeng was a little stunned. He has a wonderful characteristic. In public affairs, he treats things and not people, but emotionally, he is completely opposite, completely treating people and not things. If he is not someone he admires, no matter how he does all kinds of things, it is difficult to arouse a little spiritual reaction in him. But for the person he cared about, just a little thing could make his mind change and agitate subtly. Such a sensitive lover, some people may feel that it is not easy to serve, but Bai Xuelan is in the heart. The more Xuan Huaifeng is jealous for his own happiness, jealousy and taste, the more his nose and mouth are full of sweetness. Xuan Huaifeng was hugged by him, he couldn't walk, and he couldn't quarrel. Before he knew it, he felt that he was wrong, so he had to follow Bai Xuelan's meaning and asked him, what exactly is in that photo? People? Bai Xuelan listened to his words and actions, and knew that his good lover had been persuaded by himself, so he could take a little pleasant advantage, buried his nose in the snow-white stamina nest, and pressed his chest against Xuan Huaifeng's back. The two of them rubbed the cloth lightly between their bodies, and slowly replied, "That's a young lady named Han Weiyang." Xuan Huaifeng heard it and said, "This name seems a little familiar." Bai Xuelan turned to him, blew a sigh of relief in his ear and said with a smile, "Baby, why don't you have any ability to torture me? At this time, you should ask me, what is the origin of this surnamed Han?" Xuan Huaifeng thought about it and asked, "What is her origin?" Bai Xuelan said, "Guess what?" Xuan Huaifeng's waist was itchy when he touched it, his back was hot from grinding, and the slender hairs on his ears were trembling when he laughed. Hearing that he still had time to play with himself, it was funny and angry, and he couldn't help but laugh and elbow back. Bai Xuelan was close to him, and of course he was aware of his movements, not to mention that Bai Xuelan had practiced martial arts and reacted faster than ordinary people. Still holding Xuan Huaifeng tightly from behind, he said with a tsk smile, "I admit I was wrong. I said just now that you wouldn't ask questions, but you just don't know how to ask questions, so severe torture can still be used. If you hit me this time." "That's right. I'm afraid I'll have to vomit 2 mouthfuls of blood." Xuan Huaifeng asked, "Are you finished?" "I have to go to work." Bai Xuelan said, "Report to the commander, the subordinate understands, and the subordinate will report everything clearly. This Miss Han Weiyang is the younger sister of Han Qisheng, who is currently in charge of the Han family's army. She is very talkative in front of Han Qisheng. This Miss Han is also here for the 6-party talks. The Prime Minister's meaning is this. The VIP has a great influence on our hometown. I, the most capable customs chief, should be treated seriously without making any mistakes. You see, the Prime Minister was afraid that I would make a mistake, so he brought her photos and wrote about her preferences and habits. He was afraid that Xuan Huaifeng would take the opportunity to slip away, so he put his arm around Xuan Huaifeng's waist, took the photo and letter on the small round table with the other, handed it to Xuan Huaifeng's nose, and said, "What a private letter, purely official business. Take a look at me, so that I can clear my injustice." There was a bit of grievance in the words. Xuan Huaifeng got embarrassed, blushed, shook his head and said, "I didn't say anything, it was you who talked and explained so much. Let me go, I didn't plan to run away." Bai Xuelan said, "No, I have suffered a great grievance. You have to make amends for me, at least give me a kiss." Xuan Huaifeng had no choice but to say, "Then you have to let me go first, can I still use it? Kissing you on the back of the head?" Bai Xuelan said, "Let go of you, you are not allowed to cheat." Xuan Huaifeng said, "You are always cheating me, and you always suspect that others are just like you." Only then did Bai Xuelan let go of Xuan Huaifeng, and pulled him around, facing herself, with a wide-eyed smile, "Come on." Xuan Huaifeng looked to his left and right, and there was no one around, so he came over and kissed him on the forehead. Bai Xuelan protested dissatisfaction, "Did you still swear that you're not rude? That doesn't count. You have to kiss on the mouth." Xuan Huaifeng raised his long eyelashes, gave him a half-annoyed half-smile, and then came over again. He took a peck on his mouth and asked, "That's all right?" Bai Xuelan said, "This doesn't count. It's a good morning kiss, which is customary to give. Otherwise, what should I do when I rush back from the study? I just want to make up for this good morning kiss." "Well, now you can kiss another one, and one more kiss is the compensation for the injustice I was wronged by you." Xuan Huaifeng protested, "Who is lying now?" Bai Xuelan was lazily glanced at him and said, "I've kissed, and no one has slept. You always care about me with 1 kiss and 2 kisses. Who is stingy? If you really like me, kiss me twice and then again. Where is the disadvantage? Could it be that if you are closer to me, you will lose a piece of meat? This is really hard to refute. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help but think about it. His restraint and shyness are actually innate. No matter how good he is with the other party, he always hugs and hugs. No matter the time and occasion, kisses and kisses, after all, it is difficult to adapt. But he and Bai Xuelan are already so good, and no matter how reserved, in Bai Xuelan's eyes, I am afraid it will make Bai Xuelan sad. Xuan Huaifeng would rather be uncomfortable than make Bai Xuelan sad. After thinking about it, he didn't say anything. He walked over and kissed Bai Xuelan earnestly. Just as he was about to push it away, Bai Xuelan had already embraced him in his arms, and kissed him ferociously as if he had held it for a long time. The entanglement caused his tongue to hurt slightly, and the thin lips were half swollen, showing a fresh, tender and red color, and Bai Xuelan let go. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't move his knees. He supported Bai Xuelan's shoulder with one hand, and slowly sat down on the chair. Asked Bai Xuelan, since the Prime Minister's letter has been delivered, it seems that Miss Han is coming to the capital soon. When will you pick it up? Bai Xuelan said, she is here today, but I don't have the time to pick it up. Xuan Huaifeng was stunned and said, didn't the Prime Minister designate you to host him? Why didn't you, the host, not come when the distinguished guests came? Bai Xuelan said, so, did the Prime Minister. He knew that I was too busy, yet still sent me this kind of nasty errand. If he is not my cousin, I will directly give him a pick and train him in Beijing a pacer. This Miss Han, since she is from a military family, should not be too stingy. I plan to send someone to welcome me on my behalf. The big deal is to write a beautiful welcome letter and present the Jade exhibition. As he spoke, he seemed to think of something, and said to Xuan Huaifeng, why don't you go on my behalf? You are my adjutant, instead of it makes sense for me to greet the distinguished guests. Xuan Huaifeng smiled and said, you are the boss, and I should have obeyed the orders to dispatch me, but I went to pick up this Miss Han. What about Dr. Brown's side? What should I do? Bai Xuelan was stunned and said, yes, you have an appointment with Dr. Brown today. This is an important matter for the Drug Rehabilitation Center. It can't be delayed. I'll find someone else to entertain Miss Han. Xuan Huaifeng made an appointment. The matter of Dr. Brown was mentioned to Bai Xuelan last night. With Bai Xuelan's shrewdness, how could he have completely forgotten? Xuan Huaifeng is very pure and simple in love, but he is not stupid. After listening to Bai Xuelan's devious words, he knew that he was doing it on purpose. Xuan Huaifeng felt ashamed. He had been with Bai Xuelan for so many days, and he should have known Bai Xuelan's personality. Now that he has caused suspicion for a photo for no reason, he has almost no integrity in his actions. Xuan Huaifeng said, I advise you to follow the instructions of the Prime Minister seriously, otherwise you will be scolded again. In today's matter, I made a mistake first, please don't take it to heart. Bai Xuelan's face showed a touch, smiled lightly and said, why did you suddenly talk to me about such solemn words? Xuan Huaifeng smiled, stretched out his hands, held Bai Xuelan's left hand, and tightened it tightly. When the two met their eyes, they both felt a little warm in their hearts. Xuan Huaifeng turned his head to look out the window, it was already bright, stood up and said, since you said that you are busy, please hurry up to do things, or else you will not be back until 9 or 10 in the evening. Bai Xuelan really has something to do. I did it, rolled up my sleeves and glanced at my watch, and said, I will try to come back as early as possible today, and you should also come back as early as possible. It was only twice yesterday, so it is not enough. When I make up for it tonight, you are not allowed to escape. Waiting for Xuan Huaifeng objected, so he pulled Xuan Huaifeng up, gave him a heavy kiss on the mouth, and said, this is the deposit. Then he found a tie and a suit, and went out dressed elegantly.